Hello and welcome to my literacy sponsor presentation. This presentation was made by me, Helen R. Recio. Alrighty, let's get started. For a table of contents, we started off with the opener, and now with the table of contents. After this, we'll move on to the introduction, which I'll further introduce myself and tell you why I chose writing literacy. Next will be access, which will be talking about how my sponsor gave me access and or limited me in any way. Then literacy standards, which I will name specific literacy standards like rules, practices, rewards, and consequences my sponsor gave me. Next will be appropriation/misappropriation, which is about the traditions I carried from my sponsor. After this would be transfer. It's essentially about how I took the experiences I've discussed about and used them now. And last but certainly not least, it's the conclusion, which I will reflect on myself about writing literacies. And last is my thank you. As you may know by now, hello, I am Helen and a student at Roma High School. And today I'll be talking and explaining about why I chose writing literacy. And to be quite honest with you, the reason why I chose writing literacy was because writing has been a huge influence of my life. And later in this presentation, you'll find out why. When I was in 5th grade, my teacher had expanded my writing horizons by giving us creative writing prompts. Now, mind you, these were mandatory, so she had to spice it up a bit so it could grasp our attention. And a way she did this was she told us to give her 5 different nouns. They could be as broad as walking and playing to as specific as elephants or dogs. Then she told us to make a story using those 5 words. So an example would be, these are only going to be 2 words. So let's say I say, oh, I want llamas and pajamas. So you would have to follow up with that story with along the words of, yesterday I dressed up my llama in some very nice pajamas. Something along those lines at least. And in that moment, it just clicked for me, and it impacted the way I originally thought about writing, because the original way I thought about it was that writing had to be by the book, you had to follow certain ways of writing, and honestly it was just so sad, boring, and bland. But since she opened my eyes, I felt so awake in that moment. However, since we were transitioning from primary school to junior high, we had to improve our writing and reading skills drastically. And in order to fit the same standards as a junior high, she had to help us improve by giving us writing prompts. Plus, that impromptu version I was talking about earlier about the 5 words. And when she would give us these prompts, whoever had the best story would get either a small piece of candy like Nerds, Smarties, or a sticker. For example, we could use those stickers later on to get toys, and it was just a fun little way she would help us want to stay engaged. And honestly, it doesn't seem like much, just toys and candies and stickers, but if you tell a 10-year-old, hey, just write this and I'll give you all of these, we think we hit the lottery. It's quite funny, honestly. To be quite honest with you, you might have thought somebody my age at the time, which was 10, would not be the type to like writing stories. However, I absolutely love doing them. And as of now, I have added to the same method she taught me. However, I modified them a bit as I've grown up by making all sorts of genres. For an example, let's say I want to make a horror story, so I would add more serious words. For example, I would use, let's say, woods, lake, killer, blind. Those are absolutely marvelous words. And now, instead of writing basic stories, I actually write short stories. And honestly, it's gotten so complex to where I even write theatrical scripts. These experiences have helped me solve problems quickly and efficiently. Let me further explain myself. We were timed to make these stories, and I had to process which approach to make, and fast, because we were only given 5 to, let's say, 10 minutes, depending on how complex these words were. And in my mind, I had to think, okay, what will go well with these words? Like, let's say for an example, dogs, campfire, guitar, and music. I would have to think of a scenario, whether I would have to use personification or hyperbole, anything. And it really made me think about how I'm supposed to be writing, at least in the creative sense. And to find the right sponsor, I had to have somebody who had impacted my life so greatly, whether it be for the better or worse. Lastly, this project has made me reflect on myself, on how much I've grown as a writer over the years. And if you think of it, just from my perspective as of now, I'll think, oh, well, I've always been such a great writer. However, if I glance at how I've started off, it's quite amazing on how much I've actually adapted to these new standards of writing. And it also made me think about how people will come into your life and then they'll go. But it's the people who help you that makes an impact on your life. Thank you for listening to my presentation, And I hope you've learned something about me, or have at least related to me in any way. I appreciate it.